Hey guys, how are you doing? Welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be discussing settings. CSGO is a game where the slightest of edges can make a really big difference, and with the default settings you don't quite get that. No matter how great a game CS might be, the default settings are a little bit whack or sometimes just really unclear. Don't worry though, because in this video we're going to be covering all the settings and we'll be making sure that you know what you can be using and what you should be using and why. Before we do that though, it is of course time for our question of the day. Today's question being, what kind of aspect ratio do you use? Personally, I'm using the 69, but I've also played with the 4:3 stretch for a long time, and I go back to it every now and then. But what about you though? Make sure to let us know in the comments down below. Let's go ahead and start off by going over the video settings. The first video setting that is important to look for is the aspect ratio. For the aspect ratio, you can choose from either 4:3, 16:10, or 16:9. Both the 4:3 and the 16:10 will either have black bars or stretched resolution, although in this case of 4:3, it'll be way more extreme. And with the 69, your game will look more as it is intended, so regular widescreen. There is no right aspect ratio to use, so it all really comes down to personal preference, but there is a very noticeable difference. If you choose either the 4:3 or the 16:10, you'll either have your game slightly stretched, or you'll have some black bars on both sides of your monitor. The advantage of having black bars on the side is, according to some, better focus. Some fans of the resolution with black bars say it really helps them keep their focus on the middle of their screen. Personally, I never really understood the point of having black bars, but I advise you guys to at least give it a try and see how it works for you. The other option when running a non-default aspect ratio is having your game stretched out. Both the 4:3 and the 16:10 aspect ratios don't fully fill your monitor space, so by default you'll always have the black bars on the side, but by going into your graphics card settings, you can actually change this from black bars to stretched. Now instead of having those black bars on the side, your game will be instead stretched horizontally. Personally, I'm actually a big fan of the feeling that the 4:3 stretch gives. It makes me feel like the game is faster because the game is stretched, and the player models also feel like they're easier to spot and aim at players. It looks a little bit wanky, but additionally your graphics card will have to render less pixels and your FPS will also be higher, which can be quite impactful if you're used to playing at low FPS. If you haven't really touched your settings before, then you're more likely running the native 16:9 resolution. If that's the case, you'll have a higher field of view, allowing you to see opponents on the side of their screen that you may not have been able to see if you were using another aspect ratio. If you're already pretty much used to the 69, I honestly wouldn't recommend changing it unless your FPS is quite low or you're curious to see another aspect ratio. The second setting that is quite important to have a look at is your resolution. While it comes to the resolution, it's quite simple. All you have to do is lower your resolution until you have good FPS. Resolution is the thing that affects how good your game looks, and playing with low resolution will result in drastic quality loss. But if you aren't able to play properly because of your low FPS, maybe it's better if your game looks ugly than having a good looking unplayable game. The setting right below resolution is display mode, and for all of this, all you have to do is make sure that it's on full screen. By default, it is on full screen windowed, but on the settings, it causes a little bit of input lag. So you'll want to change quickly and put that on full screen mode. This will allow you for the smoothest experience with the highest FPS. The last thing in there will be the laptop power savings. If you're on a laptop, make sure that it is off, otherwise the game may not run at full speed. Moving on to the advanced video settings. The first few things, global shadow quality and model or texture detail, are honestly just personal preference. If you want to put these to their higher settings, your game will look way better at the cost of FPS, but if you put them lower, the settings will have the opposite effect. There's not a lot to it, so just pick what you want more. For texture streaming mode, a lot of people don't really notice the difference in FPS or the way the game looks, so we suggest you guys just leave it off. Effective shader detail is a lot more interesting though. Here you can hire them at the cost of FPS, but you'll also gain a better looking game as well as the ability to see through smokes and molotovs better. When these settings are on low, your FPS will be better, but at the same time, you might miss some free kills, or even get killed for free because you weren't able to see through a smoke or the molly very well. It also is a little bit harder to see opponents on the edges of the smokes. Because of that, we recommend these two settings to their highest possible value, if at all possible, unless it really hurts your FPS to the point where the game is unplayable. For boost player contrast, all you need to do is make sure that it's on. It makes enemies much easier to spot, and having this off is a clear disadvantage. So make sure this one's on. Same thing goes for the multi-core rendering. Having it on basically means that multiple cores of your processor can be working on running CSGO at the very exact same time, meaning a higher performance, which is what you want. There's not really a reason to have it off, honestly, so just have it enabled. For multi-sampling anti-aliasing mode, it's a little bit difficult, but if you put this setting above anything above 2x MSAA, it'll have a massive effect on FPS, but it'll also make your game look better. I guess you could say it's personal preference, but we recommend you guys turn this off or simply just 2 times because simply getting it any higher will be quite detrimental to your FPS. For the FXAA anti-aliasing though, luckily it's quite simple. This is a really old way of anti-aliasing and the only way that will make your game look blurry at the cost of FPS. So no reason to have it on really. Texture filtering mode will make your game look slightly better the higher you turn it up. It doesn't really affect your FPS a lot, so when it really comes down to it, it's just personal preference yet again. Wait, for vertical sync though, it is very, very different. Make sure it is 100% disabled. You do not want to have this on. By turning this on, I guarantee you that your performance will be ruined and also have increase of the input lag. There's literally no reason that you want to have this on in a competitive game such as CSGO, so absolutely make sure that it's turned off. This will increase the visibility at the cost of FPS, so it's a great setting to have on. Just kidding. Of course, yeah, we want you to disable that too. For the last setting, triple monitor mode, we want you to turn this off as well. Unless of course you're running the game on 3 monitors simultaneously, but I'm pretty sure 99% of you guys are not. And if you are, that's kind of dope. Alright, now that's all done, let's go ahead and move on to the audio settings. The first few things don't really matter, just make sure that your master volume is set to loud and not too high and not too low. Advanced 3D audio processing is important to take a look at though. Make sure that the setting is set to yes. It will allow you to hear where the opponents are exactly coming from overall, and it'll just give you a better idea of where the sounds are from. For VoIP volume, it decides how loud you will hear your teammates through the mic. If you think that your teammates are usually too loud, you can turn this one down and they'll be way more quiet in the future. For VoIP positional, it's really just personal preference. Basically what it does is makes the sound of your teammates speaking come from the side where they are located on the game. If you're standing in the window on Mirage and you hear your teammate in CT speaking, you'll hear it through the right ear cup. If instead it's your B apartments player speaking, it'll be from your left ear. It's a little bit like real life. Personally, I'm not used to it, so I absolutely hate this. But maybe you're a little bit more reasonable and, you can try it out. It's a really cool concept. For music, it doesn't really matter as it's just personal preference except for one crucial setting, and that's 10-second warning volume. This is the sound that will play whenever there's only 10 seconds left to defuse, and it is very useful to know whether or not you have time to defuse the bomb. So make sure you have it set to a volume where you'll be able to hear it. For me personally, I have completely turned down each and every single music setting except for the 10-second warning ever since the Easy for Ends music kit got released. A month or two after it got released, I almost went insane, and the only way to fix it was to disable all forms of music. No, but seriously though, if you hate music kits as well, or you just have heard the game's music a little bit too loud, don't be afraid to turn it down. Alright, let's go ahead and go into the game settings. The first setting we're going to be looking at here is the max acceptable game traffic bandwidth. You just want to make sure that it's set to unrestricted so there's no data throttling. In general, you always want to make sure that this is unrestricted unless your internet bandwidth can't really handle it. The next setting we're going to be talking about and going over is the Enable Developer Console. You'll want to always set this to yes. Having it set to yes will allow you to access the console by pressing the tilde key above the tab right to the left of 1. There you'll be able to change loads of settings a lot quicker, even though you may not use it now, at some point you definitely will. For the HUD settings, it really just comes to personal preference. You can change a bunch of the things there where the bomb will show up on the hood, the color of your hood, and the size of it. The only thing we recommend changing is perhaps the mini scoreboard style. Changing the setting to how player count will make it easier to spot how many opponents that you're up against so that it might be able to help your decision making. On team settings, there are 2 interesting settings that look at, and the rest just comes down to personal preference. The first one is show team positions in HUD. You'll always want to have this one set to show location and equipment. By doing this, you'll be able to spot where your teammates are even through the walls, and in general, they just really help you get an idea of what your teammates are doing and what they're holding. The second setting is show teammates colors in competitive. Having it set to colors and letters will be a little bit more convenient in my opinion because sometimes it can be really difficult to just spot the difference between the example of yellow and orange on the radar, and that will help fix that. For both communication and spectator/scoreboard settings, it barely matters and it's just personal preference. We recommend you guys having it as default. For item settings, there's a few important settings though, and the first one is switch weapon on pickup. Make sure you set this to no. It might have never happened to you before, but trust me, you do not want to automatically switch to an empty weapon laying on the floor mid-fight because you have the setting to off. Delay sniper rifle unscope after a shot is something that's technically also personal preference, but it's something that you should at least take a look at. And lastly, we recommend you guys to make sure open by menu with use key is set to no. That way it'll be easier to pick up weapons in spawn. For radar settings, we'd only recommend you guys change your radar map zoom to something like 0.35. That way you'll be able to see the other side of the map. Oh, and also make sure that radar centers the player is also set to no. The rest is up to personal preference. For crosshairs, you can also just kind of use anything as long as it's just not super ridiculous. Lastly, for keyboard and mouse settings, it's honestly just personal preference. Make sure that you use some decent mouse sensitivity and also get some custom grenade binds to pull out the grenades faster and more consistently. Well guys, I'm sure that was a lot to take in, but don't be afraid to watch it back a few times, I won't stop you. We also want to say that we appreciate you guys in the ProGuides CSGO community. It's a very tight-knit community, and I really appreciate you guys watching these videos. I'm really sorry if I sounded a little bit weird, I'm not enunciating that well. I actually bit my tongue right before the video started, so it's a little bit difficult for me to